The impressionist painter Edgar Degas spent many hours at the ballet studio and created some of the most iconic images of ballerinas that are a delight to look at and get inspired to dance. Let's take a look. Welcome to the Loft Ballerina channel. I create content for adult ballet dancers to help you with your journey and to share mine. If you're new here and you like it, please hit subscribe and make sure to check out my other videos. In this video, I want to share with you the art of Edgar Degas, specifically his many works depicting ballerinas. And I want to comment on some of the bad publicity, undeserved I believe, these works have been receiving lately. Degas became a painter in an extraordinary time and place in history. He was born in Paris in 1834, during a decade that saw the birth of the painters Monet, Cézanne, and Renoir, and the painting style they created called impressionism, in which light and texture and the painter's own interpretation of these replaced some of the realism of previous times. Degas was born to a wealthy family, which allowed him to pursue his art at leisure. His father was a banker and art lover who supported his son's studies, sending him in 1855 to the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris. I hope I pronounced that right. His mother was actually Creole, born in New Orleans, and young Degas went to Italy to study the masters in Naples, Florence, and Rome, before returning to Paris in 1859. Then, in 1862, while copying a Velázquez painting at the Louvre, Degas met the artist Edouard Manet, who drew him into the circle of Impressionist painters. It was due to Manet's influence that Degas turned to subjects from contemporary life, including cafe scenes, laundresses, and also the theater and specifically dance. Degas had a studio and an apartment in the Bohemian district of Montmartre in Paris, where he lived and worked most of his life. It was a porter of artist studios and cabarets. The artist could walk from his apartment to the gallery of art dealer Paul Durand, where he showed one of his first ballerina pictures in 1871, and to the old Rue de Pelletier Opera House, which was destroyed by fire in 1873. Opera and ballet were a fashionable part of Parisian cultural life, and Degas was in the audience before he began to paint the dancers. He also wanted to get behind the scenes, but that wasn't quite easy. It was a privilege paid for by wealthy male subscription holders called abonnés. Again, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. I'm probably not. Who often lurked in the foyers, flirted with the dancers in the wings, and creeped to their dressing rooms. Degas at first had to invoke the help of influential friends to slip him into the ballerina's private world backstage. For a time, Degas turned his attention to the abonnés, stalking them as they did the dancers. In the 1870s, the elder Haleve, another word I'm probably pronouncing wrong, had written a series of stories, The Cardinal Family, making satirical commentary on the often dark affairs of young dancers, their mothers, and the abonnés. Degas produced a suite of monotype prints for the stories, portraying the abonnés as dark, top-hatted figures. Similar figures would appear in some of his other compositions as well. Degas' pictures of ballerinas performing exquisitely show what makes ballet ballet: balance, grace, and radiance. A contemporary critic called it mime poetry, dream made visible. But on the other hand, Degas preferred to depict ballet by erasing the poetry and glamour and showing instead the hard work and sometimes the boredom, the more common moments behind the scenes. He shows the dancers stretching, lounging, doing common, ordinary things backstage. In 1875, a new Paris opera house opened, the Ballerina. It was a glorious edifice of marble ornament and gilded decor, with antique statuary and classic murals. Garnier designed a mirrored foyer for the backstage, where ballerinas warmed up and their suitors and sponsors hung out, drank, and made business deals. To the young student dancers, affectionately called petits rats, which means little mice, Degas became a familiar sight. One ballerina recalled that he used to stand at the top or bottom of the many staircases, drawing dancers as they rushed up and down. Sometimes he made notes on his drawings. But Degas made a more prodigious number of drawings in his own studio, where he paid the petits rats and also accomplished ballerinas to pose for him. Degas enjoyed the company of these dancers, who shared gossip with him as they posed, but his affection for them was paternal in nature. According to history, Degas seems to have remained chaste and was, in the view of many, somewhat of a misogynist, but that is up for debate. Yet he became close friends with a number of women, including painters Marie Cassatt and Berthe Morisot, and some of the leading opera divas and prima ballerinas of the day. The sketches Degas made in his studio and backstage at the opera were only the starting point for an artist who loved to experiment and rarely considered anything finished. He would make repeated tracings from his drawings as a way of correcting them by beginning the new figure outside of the original outlines. The drawings kept growing larger. Also, the single figures in his sketches would show up in his paintings as part of a group, only to reappear in other scenes and other paintings. When he learned how to make a monotype print by drawing on an ink plate that was then run through a press, Degas, after making one print, quickly made a second faded impression from the leftover ink on the plate. Then worked with pastels and gouache over the ghostly image. The result was an instant success. A collector bought all of these works, and they are known as the ballet master. This technique gave Degas a new way to depict the artificial light of the stage. The soft colors of his pastels took on a striking luminosity when laid over the harsher black and white contrasts of the underlying ink. Degas showed at least 5 of these images in 1877 at the Third Impressionist exhibition in Paris. During his last 20 years of career, Degas worked in a studio in Lower Montmartre above his living quarters, and a private museum for his own art collection was there. There, some of his friends recall seeing amongst the typical artist studio disarray wrinkled tutus and many discarded ballet shoes, and a wax model of a dancer enclosed in a glass case. The wax model of a dancer in a tutu standing in a glass case was undoubtedly the iconic Degas Little Dancer, age 14 sculpture. When it was first shown at the 6th Impressionist exhibition in 1881, the work was adorned with a real costume and hair. It was 2/3 life-size. It was too real for many viewers, who found her repulsive. They called her a flower of the gutter. In her pose, Degas had caught the essence of classical ballet, illustrating how a ballerina's shoulders must be held low and the head lifted. Degas never exhibited the Little Dancer again, keeping it in his studio among the many other wax models that he used for making new drawings. The sculpture was cast in bronze, and some 28 are now known to exist, only after his death in 1917 at age 83. The girl who posed for Degas' Little Dancer, Marie von Gotham, lived near his studio and took classes at the opera's ballet school. Marie passed all her early exams, rising from the ranks of petit rat to enter the Corps de Ballet at 15, a year after Degas made the sculpture. But only 2 years later, she was dismissed because she was late or absent at the ballet too often. But Marie seems to have disappeared without a trace from history. The opera's ballet master, Patrice Bard, has turned Marie's story into a modern ballet that also incorporates classical dancing, where the young dancer is reimagined through Bard's imagination. He said, "I hope this ballet will bring Degas to life for younger dancers now. That's why I created the role of the étoile, because it's every little girl's starting ballet school dream, thinking maybe one day she can become a prima, and very few get there." He said, "I wanted to create the atmosphere of Degas, but not as in a museum. It is like a painting coming to life." Degas would surely have loved to see these dancers at work on a ballet inspired by his paintings. He said, before he died, "With the exception of the heart, it seems to me that everything within me is growing old in proportion." He wrote this to a friend in January 1886. He said, "And even this heart of mine has something artificial. The dancers have sewn into it a bag of pink satin slightly faded like their dancing shoes." Sweet. Now let's talk about some of the more sordid aspects of the ballet and the times during which Degas painted. It was not all tutus and satin at the ballet at the time, or ever. Most of the ballerinas came from humble households, and yes, prostitution existed. Some ballerinas were certainly involved, voluntarily or not, in exploitative sexual relations with patrons, and this is very, very sad. But this does not deter from the beauty of the ballets created, or from the beauty of the paintings Degas created of the dancers during that time. From what is known, Degas himself never engaged in any illicit sexual affairs with ballerinas. He did have a particular opinion of women and did not see them as equals, but rather as very interesting creatures to be observed. He was very interested in movement, shapes, and textures in a painterly way. And at the ballet, he found a constant, magnificent supply of movement, shapes, and textures, especially amongst the dancers. Plus, he also found interesting the human aspect of the ballet, the struggle, the contrast between the stage and the beauty, and the backstage and the struggle, and even the vices lurking around. He was a man who thought deeply and expressed himself through his art way better than he expressed himself through words. There are records of him saying crass things towards women, but I believe his intentions were not evil. He was just definitely not a people person, but he was a keen observer of people. Here's the thing. Yes, there was corruption and depravity in the world that Degas shows in his paintings. And sometimes we can see hints of it in them, but that is not Degas' fault. He was an observer and a recorder of what he saw. We can choose to look at Degas' ballerinas and get upset thinking about how most of them probably ended up having sordid lives. Or we can look at them and think of the joy they brought to the people that watched them on stage, who themselves had wretched lives probably, and that ballet that they saw was the only magic they experienced in their life. That is a choice that we can make. I come across many articles that chose the former, and that's very unfortunate. Why would we rob ourselves of the enchantment and beauty these paintings give us? The eyes don't lie. The human brain is wired to recognize things that are beautiful and aesthetically appealing. And the paintings of Edgar Degas and his ballerinas certainly are that. So instead of dwelling on the bad, perhaps we can choose to be thankful for the good. So Edgar Degas was a bourgeois, antisocial, grouchy bachelor. Okay, who cares? He gave us hundreds of amazing and inspiring images. And in a way, it was he who immortalized those girls, the petty rats, and even the more accomplished ballerinas from that time that otherwise would be forgotten. If it was not for his work, all these moments in their lives would be gone forever. They did not have Instagram back then, or Snapchat, or TikTok. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you take some time to look at Degas' world of dancers. Trust me, you can find a lot of beauty there. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to subscribe and give this video a like, and hit the notification button so you know when I post a new video. And speaking of ballet and beautiful things, if you like ballet inspired items and vintage ballet stuff, make sure to check out my Etsy shop. It's called Bar Eternal, and there you can find hundreds of curated beautiful ballet items. I'll put a link in the notes, and keep dancing, keep enjoying the beauty of ballet, and I will see you soon on the next one. Bye.